Hi guys, this is Chastity Hewlett, and my presentation is going to be about gifted students diagnosed with Asperger syndrome. And just as a definition, an easy definition for Asperger syndrome is it's a prevalent developmental disorder described by the deficits in social communication and by repetitive patterns of behaviors or interest. The reason that I chose this topic is because I've moved to a new school and a new position, and I'll be working with gifted students, kindergarten through sixth grade next year, in a resource room. So I've tried to learn all kinds of different ways to work with gifted students. I first want to talk about some common learning issues that gifted students with Asperger's syndrome may have. The first thing is the pedantic speech, also called stilted speech. It's basically speech that contains way more information than necessary, has unneeded repetition or correction. A lot of times it tends to be blended content, like takes personal situations into account, something that they've read. So a lot of times it could be first, second, third point of view all in one paper. It's usually very literal, long-winded word content, and it's often because the gifted student with Asperger's syndrome they're not aware of the purpose of basically what your question was. The second thing is very low tolerance for change. Although both regular gifted students and gifted students with Asperger's syndrome are described as being resistant to routine at home or school, ordinary gifted students are not nearly as rigid about the routines as some of your Asperger's children are. So Asperger's children can have a great difficulty with scheduling and routines in a traditional classroom if it gets out of schedule or out of routine. They may refuse to cooperate with common learning tasks of the school if it's outside their schedule that they're used to. The third thing is lack of theory of mind. And basically, by theory of mind, it's an important social cognitive skill that involves the ability to think about mental states, both your own and others. And students with Asperger's struggle with this because they're not aware why others have a different perspective than they do, because they're not able to use that theory of mind, that skill that makes them think about mental states of others. The fourth common learning issue is the disturbance of active attention. Gifted children, ordinary gifted children, can have attention difficulties, but when they do, it's usually because they're distracted by external stimuli. Asperger's students are prone to distraction, but it's not really the distraction that comes from external stimuli. It comes from within. It's more about their inner world and the distractions that are on the inside of them. This internal distraction usually impairs their school performance because it's really something they can't shake if they get on something. The next learning issue is the lack of social reciprocity of humor. Gifted children with Asperger's may be creative with wordplay, and they may be very good at making different little puns, but they lack the social reciprocity that underlines most humor. They don't laugh at things that are funny to most people, and they often don't get the joke. The next learning issue would be affective expression. And children with Asperger's tend to present as automatons to some degree to people. Basically, they act in a very mechanical way or very unemotional. They may, I guess the response is basically not what is expected of others. So, it may be flattened or restricted. They may laugh when you think they would be upset. They may be mad when you think they should be happy, or they may become anxious inappropriately. And then the last learning issue that I'm going to talk about in my presentation is probably the most pronounced feature to distinguish a gifted Asperger's student, is their extremely lack of insight and awareness regarding the feeling, needs, and interests of others. And as an Asperger's child will talk mostly in more of a monotone about their favorite topic, they're unaware that the listener might not be interested. Or needs to leave, or is bored, or if they want to say something. I had a student like that last year, and He was gifted Asperger's, and I remember conversations that he would have with people in group work, and you could just tell the kids were really struggling to continue listening and to be there and aware in his conversation. So this tends to affect a lot of students in group work, especially if you're doing a classroom of project-based. Putting those students with other students tends to sometimes be a difficulty for them. The things that I would like to talk about as far as strategies to improve, I think the best thing is accurate identification. There are actually things that are stereotypy for Asperger syndrome, kids that wring their hands or they're rocking back and forth, or they continuously say the same things over and over and over, and they're very repetitive. But a lot of times it's just the accurate identification is what people need to get first. Asperger students, they prefer visual, concrete, literal examples. They need diagrams. They need visualization. Pictograms are recommended. Another very important part is parts to whole verbal instruction. Asperger students over-focus on details, so it's best to teach them exactly in what sequence and that you want them to use it. Rote styles of learning is recommended. Next is they prefer a teacher with a strong intuitive abilities. This is probably where I struggle most. Asperger students are extremely sensitive. You have to keep your directives and corrections short and to the point. You have to avoid lengthy explanations, and your affect has to be turned off. And that's, I guess, the part that I struggle with, that I was saying I struggle with the most, is because, you have to know that all your educational transitions have to be done with your affect turned off. Your teacher must never become angry, nor should aim to become loved, and that's hard. It'll never do to act quiet and calm on the inside or on the outside when they know you're bullying on the inside. You should give instructions in a very cool manner without being intrusive. And these are some strategies suggested in one of the articles that I had read that I thought was really good, and I just wanted to add this, is sensory integration. This is Asperger's sometimes have extreme sensitivity to some kinds of sensory stimuli. They actually have things that you can do to help students using sensory integration. Another thing discussed is social skills training. That's one of the biggest issues with students is their socialization. And there are some ways that it can be improved through this social skills training. Next is proactive behavior approaches. So if you are more proactive with those, first off, adults should not attempt to reason for more than a minute with a child that's having these issues. Brief, concrete directives are most effective. Visual supports like pictograms can be posted on a child's notebook. The first year I did pre-K, we had a Buzz Lightyear chart that we put stickers on for a student in my class that had Asperger syndrome. So having those things in place before there's an issue is much better for the teacher. And then the last thing is medications. And a lot of times medications can significantly improve the quality of life of an Asperger's child. So when they exhibit compulsive or aggressive behaviors that interfere with their school adjustment, then medication may be needed. So that is something that the parents would need to talk to their doctor about. And lastly, here are my 4 references or resources that I used. The first one is my techie resource, and the other are the 3 that I use within my presentation. Thank you very much.